Speaking of your local rivals, they lost last night, first defeat of the season.
Yeah,
I do feel like they're all going in on Arteta because he shouldn't have played Saka. Every time they haven't had a perfect result so far this season, there's been crazy amount of babies being thrown out with bathwater. I'm surprised social services have not been called yet. Do you understand? Do you understand the meltdown from Arsenal fans? Do you think they're right to put this much pressure on their team, or do you just think it was a bad night? They'll bounce back, stay relaxed. Like, where do you stand on the kind of Arsenal this season? I know it's hard but I know you're a very good.
I know. I'll try and say something level-headed, and I'll still get called out for this. Look, for me, I'll be brutally honest. I'll say the same thing I said to you in the summer that I've said to Arsenal fans. For me, I don't think Arsenal bought well. I'll be truly honest. I don't feel that from the position Arsenal were in, for the amount of money they spent, I don't think that they've done enough to go and close a gap. But in the league, Arsenal have not lost a game of football yet. Are they playing well? I don't think they're playing anywhere near last season's level. I think that's fair to say. I think we can all acknowledge that no one's watching Arsenal now and going, oh, they're good. Last year, I watched Arsenal and went, oh, I'm jealous. Look at the way you're manoeuvring the ball. This year, it's not the same. But they have lost no games in the Premier League. And, all right, they lost last night to Lens. But I don't think Arsenal are... Every team loses games. Every team losing games. There was no way Liverpool were going to go unbeaten. I don't think Liverpool are this world-class outfit that can just have this right to beat everybody. Even Man City, who are a world-class outfit, they just lost to Wolves and Newcastle. Right, so look, I think Arsenal are a very, very good football team. I'm going to say it. I feel like they've almost become a bit predictable. I feel like they don't ever change it up enough because they've not made good enough signings in the squad. And what I mean by that is Man City last year, Man City can go through bad times and good times, mix it up, and then they can make 3 or 4 changes at the weekend, still win a game, completely change from a 3 at the back to a 4 back to 2 at the back, whatever they want to do. Arsenal, for me, very much have that guaranteed first 11. And then when I look at their depth, I don't see there's too much there. And I'm not being horrible. I see that if you finish second and you're in a title race and you finish second, the objective is only one thing. You talked earlier about Man United's objectives. You finish there, then your next aim is to close this down. There's only one place to go from second, and that is to try and win it. And for me, if you're going to go and spend 200 and, I don't know, Arsenal fans will tell me if I'm wrong, 220 million maybe that Arsenal spent in the window. For me, I think that was so badly allocated when you spent over 170 of that on Havertz and Rice, when what they should have been doing is buying 4 or 5 really good players at 40, 50 million to complement the squad and give themselves a lot of options. That's just me. I don't care because I don't support them, but I don't think they've done enough. And I actually think they've gone backwards from what they were in terms of their playing style. Sorry if I waffled a bit there, but I have to be careful when talking about Arsenal, because if I say anything too harsh, people go, oh my God, you're salty. I'm not. Arsenal just, look, Havertz, shocking signing, right? 65 million, right? Buying Raya or loaning Raya when you already had a number one. I don't understand some of the moves that you've made. I don't get it, but I still think they're in for a good season.
You know what's interesting about it? Like the Havertz one, I get. I do understand that. It's interesting with Arsenal because I did a video this morning and spoke about how maybe one thing I've got. Again, we all get things right and wrong, and I talk about 6 clubs, so I'm always going to get lots of things about every club wrong. I get lots of things right as well, which is what it is.
No one ever tells you those things, though, do they?
No, not on the stuff that you get right. Not on the stuff that you know. Someone said to me today, "You've got to apologise to Lee Gunner." I said, "Oh, why?" He said he told you about Ten Hag, and he's always right. I said, "Oh." He also said that Jurgen Klopp was absolutely finished, and Liverpool were doomed if he stayed. And he said that Xavi will do nothing this season and will get sacked. I swear they're top of the league at the moment and got a new deal. So he's right about one of the 3. Like, this happens. We all get things right. We all get things wrong. Like, it's not a dig. It is what it is, right? And who knows, by the end of the season, he could be right about all 3. He could be wrong about all 3. Exactly. This is what happens. Right now, like, the firepower isn't quite there at Arsenal consistently enough, where last season they didn't have a problem scoring goals. I think that's partly to do with teams being more defensive against them. I also think there's an element of Arsenal, and I think this is more by design. You mentioned the style of football. I almost think they're holding back slightly. And although that's risky, you see people do this sometimes in Britain's Got Talent, especially they're not singers. I can't do all my best jokes or my best act in the audition because I might have a semi-final and a final to come and I've got to keep getting better.
Right.
That logic works in football as well. I think Arsenal last season came out like a bull in a china shop. They maybe used too much energy up throughout the course of the season and faded towards the end. There is a train of thought, and Man United used to do this. Pep does it every year. There's a relatively, I know he's won a lot of games this season, but it's a relatively slow start in terms of their swashbuckling, powerful, relentless football. It's a slower start and they get better as the season goes on. I have a feeling, and I'm not saying it will come off, that's what Arsenal are trying to do. Almost, we can't play in 10th gear from the start of the season because we got to March last year and we had nothing left in our legs. You almost have to temper yourself, taper yourself down and say, we can't be relentless from the beginning. And I think that there's an element of that going on. So they do need to start scoring more goals. And at the moment, like Saka's numbers ain't been too bad this year. Trossard needs to add more goals to the games that he plays in. And obviously Martinelli coming back. And I think if they can keep themselves within touching distance of the title race come January, I think they will go out of their way and sign a striker. I think someone like Ivan Toney would help transform what they've got. I do agree with you. The Kai Havertz, listen, I get them giving him the penalty, and Arsenal fans got to hope that it works. But every time I watch him play at the minute, I just think he takes something away from their team. Listen, Bruno's been great for us over the years. But that's what I see when I watch Bruno play right now. I see a player that's more of a hindrance than he is an asset. And I think the manager's got to do something about that. And sometimes playing players through bad form doesn't help. It doesn't. And I think that Fabio Vieira has been much better than him this year and should be starting more games than him as an example. But I do still feel, though, that some Arsenal fans, like I said, baby out with the bathwater. I get there's a desperation to win. They want to be the best and they want to be perfect. And maybe you see this across social. Sometimes there's a lot of over-analyzing based on one or two games. And it's almost a case of, like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but you're making absolute statements based on very little evidence. So there's a lot of people go, oh, you know, we're never going to see Partey and Rice playing midfield together. You don't know yet because the first two games of the season you didn't because of injuries and a lack of fitness in other areas. And then Partey's been out injured. If he's fit, both fit, and you never see them play together after 4, 5, 6 games, then you criticize it. But I don't get why you're angry about that when it hasn't been possible yet to really play them. Those are the elements where I just think you're applying unnecessary pressure and criticism to your team that they don't need. And I know some people think, well, pressure creates diamonds and all this stuff. I don't think it helps. I think there's an element of boo when you need to, be critical when you need to. But there comes a time where I just think you need to be a fan, be supportive, be patient. And sometimes I think saying less is saying more in terms of helping your team. And I just think Arsenal fans have got like first world problems at the moment. And I gave the example the other day. It's like me getting angry. Oh, I've had a terrible day today, Sav. I had to clean the leaves out my swimming pool. No one's going to give me any sympathy. That's how I feel about Arsenal. I just have no sympathy for them. I don't feel like they're in any kind of bad position, but they're talking.
Do you know the problem?
In 10 games. It's crazy.
The problem for me, I was speaking to one of my best mates who is an Arsenal fan. He's quite level-headed. And he said the problem for him is he feels that Arsenal fans now are so, and Arsenal as a club, are so far ahead of where they thought they'd be at this stage. It's unreal. And he doesn't mean now this season. It means they went 8th, 5th, 5th. Last year, hardly anyone was talking about them getting in the top 4, and then they're on a title challenge. And that has taken expectations from here to there in 12 months. Now, that's great. To do what they did last year was brilliant. They did really, really well in the league. To get to 5th, from 5th to 2nd, difficult to keep doing it. And that's the difference between when you're talking about pressure, when you're talking about winners, when we're talking about the best players, right? When we're talking about, oh, but like Pep only goes to the best clubs. The pressure at the top is to do it year in, year out. That's the pressure, right? This is the pressure of these players. Have Arsenal done enough for me to be better than last season? I don't think so. But again, it's 7 games in the league. It's 7 games gone.
That's exactly it. And I think that, as you say, when you're ahead of expectation or ahead of schedule, it can change the barometer. of where you're at. And the weirdest thing is the people that seem to get most angry are also the same ones that don't believe they're good enough to do it anyway. And I'm almost like, that's why I don't get the anger. It's like, yeah, we're awful. And then they play badly and they're like, oh, why didn't we do better? But you said they're awful.
Spurs the biggest example of that right now, Terry. Spurs are the biggest example. No one said after 7 games we'd be sitting here second, unbeaten, 1 point off City. And those fans at the beginning of the season, I'll call out Spurs fans. I don't, me, I'll call out whoever. Those Spurs fans that when I said, yeah, do you know what? I like Postecoglou. I think that's a good choice as manager. We need a project manager. We need a guy that's going to come in and implement something. But he's only done it in Scotland. He's only done it in Celtic.
No, mate.
Now we're second. Oh, we could go on a title chat. Whoa.
Yeah.
Where's this come from?
Do you know what it is? And men do this a lot more than women do it. All right. And I'll give you an example. Obviously, we have a lot of ladies that come on the terrace, and I have chats with a lot of them over the years. And I'm like, have you ever been an example where like a guy might message you a nice message and say like, oh, you were really good on the football terrace. Great. Have you ever messaged back a nice message and then the man just doesn't read the signals and thinks, oh my God, I'm in here. This is my new woman. And they're all like, yeah, all the time. I'm like, yeah, men are terrible at reading signals generally. And we're just as bad with women as we are with football. You win 3 or 4 games, you're back to your best, you're firing, you're going to kill it. Equally the other way, you can lose 1 game. Like, I think Arsenal are going to have a very good season. They lose their first game in 10. And everyone goes, Cito, you're wrong to say they're good. What are you talking about? Like, if they go on to lose another 6 of the next 10 games, maybe I'll hold my hands up and go, maybe I was a bit premature with this. But they go and beat City this weekend. No one's going to remember this loss to Lons later on in the campaign. This super chat, though, bang on, though. Look at this, Sav. So the same Arsenal fans that were complaining about the manager rotating and experimenting at the start of the season are now complaining that he doesn't rotate enough. And this is the absolute key point. At the beginning of the season, when he wasn't starting
always.
Exactly. When he was rotating at the start of the season, wrong. So why isn't he rotating now? But he's rotated prior to this run of games. Like I saw this dumb thing today about Saka. I know, cool, I can hold my hands up and go, maybe he shouldn't have played yesterday. But this nonsense of he's appeared in 87 Premier League games on the bounce. Of course he's going to get injured. All talisman do. His last 3 years, I think he's averaged 48, 43, 46 games in totality each season. You go and look at any top team and look at their talismanic players, Sons, Henry's, Messi's, Ronaldo's, whatever. They're all playing that amount of games. Even at 20 years of age, 21 years of age, 22 years of age, they were all doing it. Equally, Saka has had his rest because he's barely played in the last 3 years. European football, did last year before, not 1 game. He barely plays in the domestic competitions. Whether you're in it or out of it, he barely plays. So that's when he's getting his rest. So there is rotation there. You're just not noticing it because he plays most Premier League games. And there's these weird fallacies that are being created that, again, are agenda-based. Doesn't mean some of the criticism isn't right. But this notion of 1 minute you don't want rotation, the next minute when there isn't as much rotation, you're angry about it. Well, make your fucking mind up. What do you want?